Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new crusade. Today I'm going to be talking with Mike Pantile. We're going to be talking about kind of what he's good at, which is exercise and physical health, as well as kind of general manliness. You might know Mike from the CMask podcast that he does with Tim Gordon and a couple other guys. Sometimes they have some other guests on the Christian or Catholic Masculinity podcast, as well as the content he puts out on his own. And then I believe, Mike, you also have it's like personal training and coaching as well, don't you? Or something similar to
Yeah,
that?
so I'm a long time gym owner. I sold the gym last year, but now it's mainly online coaching and mentorship in the Catholic space. So helping guys overcome pornography, lead their marriages better. But mainly, I've done a real big pivot to still a lot of that stuff, but intertwined with fitness because I think Christendom needs more physically strong and capable and virtuous men. So that's I would say what I mainly do now. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I had gotten. Although now you've also become one of the resident podcast guests, bouncing around on everyone's podcast, Pints with Aquinas, and obviously on CMask and all those big ones. So kind of pushing your name out there that way.
The Lord has been better than I deserve, man. I expected the complete opposite to happen when I reverted officially last year, and then it was just an explosion of beautiful opportunities, being on Pints and, with Matt Fradd and soon to be, well, maybe I shouldn't announce it because the guy himself hasn't announced it. So maybe I'll keep that one under wraps. But let's just say, meeting with all the men that helped, revert me or convert me, and then now having this opportunity to be on their show and then being on CMask is it's just the Lord is so good, bro. So I'm just trying to be a good. That's why when you reached out to me, I had to jump on it as well. So I apologize for the difficulty in scheduling it. Things get a little hectic with owning businesses and having little children, but I'm happy to be here with you, man. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. It's I know sometimes it's an ask to get to ask from a smaller guy, but I think that a lot of people, especially even the bigger guys in the Catholic space recently have only gotten big recently. So I think a lot of them kind of know what it's like to be small. And so far, I've only seen a lot of goodwill, and everyone's been really nice to work with so far. So it's been awesome. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and I wouldn't even look at it as like, yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay.
You all
Yeah,
good?
yeah, good. Yeah.
Yeah, collaborating with the quote unquote smaller guys. We were all small guys at one point. And I remember when I started social media in like the end of 2022, I had like 300 followers, 400 followers on Instagram. And a good friend of mine, Kurt Storing, had me on his podcast. And I had like prayed to just do one podcast appearance. So, like, no matter how quote unquote big I get, I mean, that sounds so cringe because I never look at myself that way. You know, I would always jump on, let's say, quote unquote, smaller shows. It matters. We can't forget where we came from and helping out everybody that's new in the social media space too. There's so much room for all of us to eat, man, especially at this table with what we're talking about, that the more good voices the better, and in fact we need them, especially younger voices. So yeah, I appreciate it again, Caleb.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. I think a big thing too, especially, is that kind of in the realm of what you're doing, and to some extent what Tim Gordon does, but he really does have a lot of that kind of intellectual, serious background. He likes his like 15-point words and all that kind of stuff. But one reason why I really respect him is because he's very, for lack of a better term, he's just like manly, and I think that there's a place for kind of a tweed jacket intellectual, but most guys aren't that. That's why I respect Anthony and Rob from Avoiding Babylon too. But and especially when, I mean, the Catholic online sphere is probably 90 to 95% tweed jacket and only 5 to 10% regular guys. So there's definitely a lot of space for kind of regular guys to come in and give a more personal approach, and just to help, like kind of what you're doing, help Catholic guys figure out the other parts of their life. Not everyone is born to read the Summa at people, or educate them and form priests, or be a RCIA instructor or something like that. That's not everyone's calling.
Tim is like such an amazing blend of being like a regular awesome bro type of guy and the smartest guy that I know, hands down. I know a lot of smart guys. That guy's intellectual horsepower is like second to none. So it's just I don't know how he manages both, but yeah, he's an amazing guy, and I'm very grateful to be close friends with him. He's actually the him and Steph Gordon are the godparents of my youngest child, so we're very blessed to have them.
That's
Again, like
excellent.
when I'm on CMask, it's like kind of like the running joke. I'm like the relatable guy because I don't have the IQ of these dudes, and I'm more than willing to say that. Like, whatever, I stay in my own lane. I'm good at what I'm good at. And so Tim will go on these like completely unhinged intellectual rants. It'll be like, so what do you think, Mike? And I'm like, I don't know. I caught maybe like 4 words that I could understand out of that, like whatever
Mhm.
you just said, and I just take my best guess at what I thought I understood from what you said. But yeah, no, Tim's a gem. Love that guy.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so I think for today's video, I'd already told you this, but I'll tell it for everyone in the audience. We're going to be going over a thread that Mike put out on his Twitter that I thought was pretty good. It kind of it'll further the ideas that we've already talked about, and then we can delve more into anything that we find interesting. But the thread was called 10 Reasons Why All Christian Men Should Build Physical Strength. So I already told Mike, but I'll say it again. I thought this was really good because a lot of people, when I will often talk with people and I'll talk with them about trying to get, especially different men, to dress better and groom themselves better and get a better haircut, especially my friends but people online too. And it's often a lot of hostile responses. And I'd imagine it's kind of similar from getting people to, work out and take care of themselves in that way as well. And so, you'll often hear from people that, oh, well, as long as my spiritual life is squared away, then it's fine. And Mike and I were talking and we were saying that, that's not really what the Bible says. And that's not what the church teaches. Obviously your spiritual life is more important to focus on, but you still need to make sure that you look nice and you still need to make sure that you're healthy. Neglecting your body is not a Christian practice, at least in a non-penitential way, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely putting first things first. I mean, that's keeping things well ordered. That's what I try to talk about as much as possible because at one time my life was very disordered and that I put these secondary things, matters of the physical, as first priorities, and then matters of the spiritual as second priorities. And when that happens, I mean, everything descends into chaos. So, I mean, um, I'm trying to do my best in bringing the topics of virtue and our faith and conjoining that with physical culture. And so I think it was something that Pope Pius XII said in an address letter to the Italian sporting associations in the 50s was that he mentioned that there's been no other faith that respects and honors the totality of a person and their dignity, much like Catholicism. And that's one thing that I love about Catholicism. It's not just okay, well, of course, matters of first priority, talking about the spiritual life and the prayer life, but also matters of the physical as well. So he did this whole address on the importance of sport and what it can do when it is rightly ordered. And so, how can I bring this into more layman's terms, less sort of theological language, so guys like me can understand it? Sort of, I'll coin it meathead theology, to bring the meathead degenerate bros like my former self to the faith and as a means of like evangelizing them to the faith, but also bringing these guys that are very well studied and very, very intelligent guys. But when you look at them, they're not exactly like the embodiments of masculinity. And so I think it's really important that we bring these two worlds together, not just for our own sanctification and edification to become more like saints, if you will, but also as a means of evangelizing. Because what I think is happening in the church is that we're kind of, well, we're gaining a lot of people. There's this huge renaissance happening, but I think we're losing a lot of young men that are to the secular world, to the sort of Andrew Tate sort of red pill mentality, or to atheism, Islam, even to a degree Eastern Orthodoxy, which is still a step in a very positive direction, mainly due to the aesthetics, not because the teachings of the church are wrong, because they've been upheld for 2,000 years. But I think we're doing a poor job of representing it, and part of that is physical. So what we were talking about, dressing better, but also presenting yourself as a physically strong and capable man, which has been much of my life's pursuit, much of it disordered. But now, especially coming back into the fullness of the truth, I've never enjoyed or seen the benefits of training the way that I do now, with sort of like the Catholic lens and foundation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, let me pull up your list and then we can get right into it.
Sure.
You put number one, a quote from St. Ignatius of Loyola. It says, "Remember that bodily exercise, when it is well ordered, as I have said, is also prayer by means with which you can please our Lord. It is a movement meditation with God if put in its proper place." So that's kind of what you were just talking about. But, you know, I
Yeah,
really
and,
like
and
that
to
a lot.
practically,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
no, finish your point. Sorry, didn't mean
I
to
was going to
interrupt you.
say, I really like that a lot because I think that I think that God obviously gives us work. Like that's one thing that I think that a lot of people think that like being retired is like the goal. Like your goal is to escape work and just to do nothing all day, you know? But working is something that we're given and work is a good thing. The issue is just that unfortunately a lot of people don't have dignified work and that makes them hate it, right? And I think that physical exercise is a way that we can engage in that Christian kind of God inspired work is by, taking care of ourselves, especially through things that are very difficult, like weightlifting or sports, competitive sports, things like that.
Yeah, it's a really amazing place to cultivate the virtue of fortitude. And then when you're sort of in a good place where you're training routinely, again, it becomes a very edifying place for prayer in sort of movement. And all it takes is really, practically speaking, because I know a lot of guys really want to have their hands held, and I know I do. It's like, okay, I understand that, but how do I apply it? Just say a prayer. Say a prayer, invite God into the process. And also too, if you got a home gym like I do, uh, have icons on on the walls, on you, have your rosary around, so you're constantly reminded of why you're there. You're constantly reminded to invite Christ back into the process with you. And if you're at a normal gym like 90% of people, have your bracelet, have your rosary on, I like to, if people see this in my videos a lot, they'll see my crucifix dangling. I purposely don't tuck it into my shirt, so when I'm going and I'm gearing up for a deadlift, I can see Christ on the cross when I'm doing it. And it sounds really meatheadish to guys that have never tried it, but to those of us that want to merge these two worlds, those reminders are so powerful. And so once you're in a good place with lifting and building the virtue of fortitude, it lends itself to eating better as well, which now we're talking about the development of temperance. And so fasting and all these things are critical to our faith as well. And so again, when you're paying attention to it, these are not just realms with shout out to Anthony, by the way. I love that dude. Such a solid guy. Meathead
Yeah, he's
Theology,
awesome.
straight up. Yeah, he's so good. Um, but once you bring those worlds, like, we're not just developing natural virtue. Number one, we're in a state of grace. We're going to confession frequently. This is my meathead way of understanding what St. Thomas said when the physical conforms to the operations of the soul, grace building on nature, and Pius XII alluded to this in that address as well. And so in my meathead brain, that clicked instantly. I said, okay, well, stronger shoulders, stronger spirit, so anyways, I could rant on that point on and on and on, but I don't want to belabor it too much.
Yeah, for sure. All right, then your next point was sport said Pope Pius XII is an effective antidote to softness and easy living. It develops temperance and fortitude. It goes far beyond mere physical strength and leads man to moral strength and greatness. Grace builds on nature. I think that's really good. And I think that kind of like what we were saying, one of the things is that obviously when you see people who are physically in good condition, and I'm not even meaning just like, meeting like the doctor's orders of what counts as healthy, but someone who is actually in like excellent, physical health, even if that person is not a good person, you see the virtue that they've cultivated by, reaching that point. And you especially see the benefit when you meet someone who is actually a virtuous person who has then cultivated it. All things being equal, if I have two virtuous friends and one of them can take good care of himself and one of them doesn't, there is a serious, I guess they're not equal in virtue if one of them is healthy and one of them is not, because he would naturally be more virtuous by keeping himself healthy. So I don't know. You want to elaborate?
That's exactly right. And it kind of speaks to one of my later points, is that it's a very powerful tool for evangelization, especially with these younger guys that probably pay attention way too much to the physical. When they meet you and you're a guy that knows how to restrain his speech, that you're pious and you're practicing, it makes them want to inquire. Okay, so there's something different about this guy, not just physically, but the way that he carries himself and it conducts himself. And there's a lot of cope. I see a lot of cope, and what I mean by that is, oh, the Saints weren't jacked. It's like, yeah, they didn't need to be, because they were saints. They were a lot of them were physically tough guys, but they were saints. If you're a saint, this doesn't apply to you. But if you're an overweight pious guy, absolutely this applies to you. Or an underweight pious guy, yeah, this absolutely applies to you. And so any justification to the contrary, to me, is just pure cope. And so these guys need to sort of wake up to the reality, understand that the truth hurts, but that it heals in the end. Listen, I was over 300 pounds before, so I know what it's like to be overweight and super unhealthy, but I lost 120 pounds. I've been lifetime drug free, and I've been able to sort of pull myself out of the mud by the grace of God in those ways. And I think the barbell for me has been a tool God has used to steer my life in the right direction. And I know it sounds like an exaggeration, but I truly mean that. So anybody talking about, the Saints not being jacked, you're just coping so you can just stay lazy. And so you need to have some humility and address that in yourself.
Yeah, 100%. I like this comment. Taking care of God's gift to you is key.
That's
Yeah,
right.
taking care of the body that God has given you. I also think that that's not even true in a lot of cases. If you know anything about Saint Damien, the patron saint of Hawaii, he was known for being extremely physically strong, and he wanted to just work, and he ended up being sent to Hawaii and became like one of the most prolific missionaries in all of the South Pacific. Obviously, Saint Hyacinth is literally the patron saint of weightlifting. And there's also, I think, another thing that a lot of people ignore is that, like, all the military saints and all of the soldier saints, Saint George, all of those, they would have been in excellent physical condition. And also, the average person back then would have also just been in comparative to today, relatively excellent physical condition. They were basically eating what would be like one of the most restrictive kind of paleo style diets that we eat today, like grains mostly, like, just super healthy. And then they were probably walking, the better part of a 10 or a dozen miles a day. It's like working all the time, for us to get to that level. I've kind of said, and I would be curious to hear your thoughts on this. I was talking with one of my friends or with a group of friends, and I was saying, I think to really achieve the virtue that you should physically, you should want to be at least as physically healthy as like a high school varsity athlete. That to me does not seem like an extreme level of fitness, like an achievable level. You should be able to go play like varsity basketball. Maybe not skill wise if you don't like basketball, but if you kind of get what I'm saying, it's achievable for almost every single 17-year old.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to just lay out some standards real quick, and try not to use my um, I guess kind of skewed powerlifting standard, but most guys should be and could be 13 to 15% body fat. It's not that hard to get that low. And it's not even that low. I've been in the single digits before, and that's hard to get to. 15%, like sub 20%, let's say at the very least, is not hard to do. You should be able to bench your body weight for 20 reps. Okay. So, or 2 plates for at least 1 rep. Okay. That's not hard to do. Squatting 3 plates and deadlifting 4 plates. In fact, I'll take it this far. You shouldn't be allowed to vote unless you're a landowner and can deadlift at least 4 plates. So those are my standards for like, and that is not hard to achieve, guys. That's not hard to achieve. And yes, cardio matters. Like people start coping. What if I'm a runner? Yeah, like endurance running is like not good for you. I mean, look into it yourself. So like only some cardio is really needed to keep your heart healthy. But I think those standards are very achievable for most men. And once they get there, they'll find that they're really enjoying the momentum of that progress, and won't be surprised that they end up as strong as Anthony, which he's a good example of a young man who's strong and pious, and more young dudes ought to emulate his example. So those are not difficult to do, guys.
Yeah, and to bring up Anthony, he's also like 5'6". So if he can do it, and he can be 5'6" and do it, then most guys are right around that height. So he's literally most of you guys. He is the good example of the short king who's reached the place he's supposed to be. So there you go. All right, let's go to the next one. It says. Your third point was to experience the miracle of creation. Every adaptation made is another opportunity to marvel in God's design and how he constructed the human body. Will you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, we can understand through science these physiological processes for the most part that happen when hypertrophy muscle growth occurs, when strength adaptations occur, which are essentially just neural adaptations and expressions of strength through newly acquired muscle mass and tissue. But to me, it points to this perfect creator that created a man's body to do arduous things. So the fact that I've deadlifted 805 and my body didn't just snap in half under that. And I started around 400 pounds and effectively doubled that over, let's say 13 or 14 years of training. My body doesn't look that much different, but somehow, some way, my joints, my nervous system, my skeletal structure is able to support that weight. How is that possible? It makes me look up in complete awe, and and just again, just like I said, marvel in his ability to create such a robust, soft, it's the same point, but robust creature in human beings, and especially us as men who are designed to do that. Um, and I think, nothing has made me appreciate, my physical strength more than looking at it through that lens. Like, what an incredible gift it is to be able to do that, but also being in this body that is able to somehow, through some miracle of these physiological adaptations, get stronger and stronger and stronger, is just a testament to a perfect creator.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a great point. I don't really think I have much I could add to that. I think you made that point really well. I'll move to the next one. Let's see. You said, point five, it reconnects a man with the toil of the fall. This is kind of what I had talked about slightly. After sin entered the world, Adam was banished to render resources from the earth in painful toil. In a soft world, this allows us to experience the essence of our fallenness, our masculine roots of hard work, and reminds us why we need Christ. So I think this is really good. Like, I work in an office, so I'm just on Excel spreadsheets and email all day. And there's something, you really, especially doing a job like that, you lose the kind of connection between work equaling reward. I mean, it's work and it kind of has its cost on you in a different way, but I don't think it's in a way that's natural to us. And so because of that, going and doing natural work, whether that be martial arts or weightlifting or anything strenuous, I don't know, hiking, all those type of kind of traditionally masculine activities but they need to be hard, really go and this guy said, I'm lame, I need to go work on an oil rig. But well, someone has to work in the office of the oil rig. So unfortunately that doesn't really solve the problem. But
It's true.
yeah, I think that's really good, and kind of like a little bit what I was saying about connecting yourself to your work. And I think that it really, to some extent, it's also a penance for, what you're doing, and kind of like what you were just saying too, being grateful for what you've been given, and because of that, you go and you use it.
Yeah, we live in a society that is so soft that we look at our bodies as just a means of transportation for our heads. And so we're completely disconnected from our physicality, from the totality of our personhood and how God created us. And, a lot of it has been positive technological advancements where we're able to work from home. Like, listen, make no mistake about it, I pontificate about masculinity in my sweatpants in my basement gym. So I'm not pretending that I'm like this manly man that is doing these arduous things outside, because I'm not. But this is precisely why we need to have this environment where we do recreate those arduous things. I grew up working with my hands, and that is incredibly good for a man's soul. And so, if that's not possible because of office work or what have you, and you're more of a white collar guy, or you're a social media content creator, whatever you want to call yourself, recreating this work is incredibly important to reconnect yourself with that. And so, and Will Noland has said this best. And in his accent, it sounds a lot less cringe, a lot more epic, but it kind of connects a man with his wanting to grip the steel and go to battle in a way, right? We all have that sort of nature, and it connects us with Adam and what happened post fall, and reminds us how much more we need, not rest in our work, but rest in Christ. But we need to work and use our bodies. Faith without works is dead. We're not just, Manichaeans. We're not just Gnostics. We're not separate from our bodies. We're a spirit human composite. And especially in such a like Uber Eats, video games, digital, white collar work world, this is more essential than ever.
Yeah, 100%. Your next point was point six, a hard physique makes for a powerful tool of evangelization. In short, you'll convert more people with an impressive physique than you would if you were soft, like 99.9% of modern men. What are your
I
thoughts?
mean, yeah, we touched on it earlier, right? Like, if you're a pious practicing person, and I'm not the most pious, and I'm not the most physically impressive, so I'll just put it to you that way. But when guys come to find out about my, like, how devoted I am to my faith, it's the most central point to my personality and my life. On top of it, kind of being juxtaposed beside a decent physique and decent physical strength, they naturally want to inquire more about the faith, and it's going to do a lot more than a guy being out of shape and trying to talk about all these complex things. Similarly, I experienced this when I was super overweight and talking about fitness to people. Nobody would hear me out. I was the overweight guy talking about diet and exercise. Nobody was going to listen to me. Now, as soon as I lost 120 pounds and I became ripped, everybody wanted to listen to me. And in fact, that turned into a business at that point for me because people were actually willing to hear. And how the more powerful it is can be, how much more powerful it can be when you're a physical example of like the unceasing work for Christ. And I just think in a generation right now where I think the younger folks are way too obsessed with aesthetics and vanity, it's a way of kind of drawing them in and then snatching them and keeping them for good and leading their souls to heaven. So I think, I mean, without belaboring it too much, I think it's pretty clear why that's a positive thing, especially for young men.
Yeah, for sure. I think it gives you an avenue as well. When you're excellent at something, someone might not necessarily, especially someone who's not a Christian, might not respect you because, oh man, I go to mass this many times a week and I pray the rosary every single day and I do X, Y, and Z. But when you tell them, oh yeah, like, I lost all this weight and now I can deadlift 800 pounds, they go, oh wow, this guy's serious. Like, I can respect this thing about him. So then when you tell them, oh, and I pray the rosary every day and it's also super effective for me. And then they go, well, he's done other things that are really effective, And so I think that it's a good way to kind of, and people can just look at you and they can see it too. People look and they see that you're in good shape and they respect it.
Yeah, so like if you're a tradesperson, for example, right? Like mastery is something that we all appreciate and respect in other men, regardless of their background. Like we just respect mastery because that's a hard status to achieve. When you're a blue collar guy, nobody knows what you're masterful in. But when you have an impressive physique and you look strong, like that's a clear indicator that there's at least a level of mastery and discipline in a specific area of your life. And so, exactly when you start speaking about these other things, and a man looks at you as somewhat masterful, having some type of aptitude in this specific area, he's more likely to pray that rosary. So, just makes sense to me.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree. All right, your point eight, we kind of touched on this. I'm going to skip to point nine. Point nine, the body, in fact, and only the body, is capable of making visible what is invisible, the spiritual and the divine. It has been created to transfer into visible reality of the world the mystery hidden from eternity in God, and thus to be a sign of it from Pope John Paul the Great. So,
I mean, faith producing good work in us, right? That's what at least comes and translates into my mind. When you read that, how did you perceive that? How did you interpret that?
let me read through it one more time. Give me a second. The body and I think that there's definitely something I'm missing that someone more well-versed could probably cross-reference and bring up an example. To me, I don't think I'm able to see much more than just the fact that kind of being in a good place with God kind of, will lead to you being more virtuous, whether that be through your prayer. And although obviously your disciplines and your action has to cultivate the virtue to kind of build up the spirit within you, to kind of build up your holiness and your saintliness. So it kind of happens both ways, kind of inside out and outside in. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like
Definitely.
I don't have too much to add to it.
Yeah, outside in, inside out. That's such a good point. Because changing yourself physically certainly changes yourself internally, but changing yourself spiritually also changes yourself physically and what you do on a day-to-day basis. So they work on each other and with each other. But I think this speaks to, the epistle of St. James, faith without works is dead, and like, faith produces good work in us. And a perfect example of that, for me is, becoming Catholic and then now frequenting confession, examining my conscience, really auditing my thoughts, having a robust prayer life, not just with myself, but with my family, receiving the Eucharist regularly. Like my faith and love for Christ has sort of been illuminated. I describe it as, I was in a dark room before and I knew Jesus was in that room and I know I would die for him, even in that dark room where he was at. But it's like the lights got switched on and I was able to see, God the Father, Christ, our Blessed Mother, the whole, the communion of saints. And it lit a fire within me that then went on and produced this amazing work, quitting alcohol, um, you know, not lusting anymore, getting to a higher level of virtue that only would have come from faith as the center versus, if you get a guy like Tate, you can kind of see some degree of natural virtue, right? He's prudent. He's made a lot of money. He's, lean. So he's got some level of temperance and he's got some physical strength and he's capable. So he's got some element of fortitude, but those only have natural ends if they're not conformed to the supernatural. And that engine is faith.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think as well, the discipline that you cultivate in any one area of your life will only make it easier in every other area. And so, a lot of people, depending on what your work schedule is, maybe you have to wake up early to go work out. Maybe you have to stay up late to get in a workout, whatever it is, prioritizing that important stuff also translates to maybe I need to wake up even earlier to, pray. Maybe I need to stay up late and I need to sit with this person in my life and pray, or pray with them or pray for them or whatever it is. And kind of it teaches you to prioritize. Spiritually you have to learn to prioritize what's important, and as well physically you have to learn to prioritize what's important. And especially when I was talking with someone the other day, and she was saying that all the things that she was specifically outside of the regulations of Lent that she's giving up for Lent to focus on prayer. And it's like, man, she was saying it, I was like, man, I'm always distracted by that, man, I'm always distracted by that, just constantly. And I'm like, there's just so much to distract us. Really focusing on the important things is oftentimes nowadays very difficult.
Yeah, it is. And I've always said too that, if you're training and you're lean and you're strong, but you've got no money and you make no money and all these other things, you're missing the forest for the trees. Is specifically these principles of strength training and overcoming plateaus and getting lean and staying lean that taught me how to, in a way, start and run a business. And at this point, several businesses that, praise glory be to God, have all been successful in their own right. And then taking that and then applying that to my prayer life with discipline and consistency, and not really caring about motivation, because motivation is, extrinsic, is very fleeting and very fickle, and when it's there, get great, capitalize on it. But you know it's kind of like the Catholic me last year, going through this crazy period of consolation, right? And so Father Ripperger said that, when you're in a period of consolation, you're at like the dog food bowl level of your faith. Like, you haven't been tested, God's giving you all these graces, and you're really only tested, much like your habits, when you're in a period of desolation. You're not getting that extrinsic sort of feedback, and now it's like you're left to your habits and how much you truly see God for who he is, and not just for what you get out of it, which I think is probably a struggle and a lifelong path for all of us, much like discerning his will. But I see those things as sharing specific traits in that specific way. It's like, hey, if you're just physically virtuous, you got nothing else going on for you, man, you're not paying attention.
Yeah, 100%. That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, it's kind of one of the reasons I really want to talk to you, and I'd kind of already touched on it. And like I had said with Tim Gordon, is that I've told some other people, I kind of have two groups of friends. And one of them is they're all Catholic, and I don't think any of them work out. And then I have another group who are all my friends from high school, and all of them are in really good shape. They're not all necessarily weightlifters, some of them do like extreme sports and some other stuff like that, but they're all in relatively good shape. And then, but they're all like really, really low church Protestant, like, oh man, like, let's go camping. We're not going to church this weekend. Oh man, like, let's go do this. We're not doing this, And so it's weird because I see these two extents, these people who take really good care of themselves and physically, and then these people who take really good care of themselves spiritually. And it's like, man, where is the middle? And that's why I was, like I had said at the beginning, I'd really appreciated you being willing to talk to me, because I think on that spectrum of doing both, you are, on the physical excellence side, and Tim Gordon actually is
Thank
too. To
you.
be fair to him, he's kind of excellent at both of them. He's kind of
Yeah,
a
he
really
is.
good example.
Yeah, he definitely is. He's in good shape. He's a strong guy too. Will Noland needs a lot of credit in this area too. He does a lot of marriage stuff, so he doesn't really speak so much about it. The guy deadlifted 700 pounds, benched over 400. You squatted a ton, lifetime drug free as well. And we're kind of similar. And I'm the king of the manlets, but we're both kind of in that same, like, I'm 5'11, he's like 5'9. We have very similar physiques. The joke is, him and a forklift had sexual relations, and then I was conceived out of that relationship with this forklift. So that's been the ongoing sort of inside joke the last couple of years, because I think I'm the only guy in sort of this sphere that deadlifts more than he does. So I call him dad. He's also him and Rachel Nolan are the godparents of my eldest child as well. So I have to give Will credit, because he's one of the other probably top 3 strongest guys in this online space that we have. He's just very humble about it and doesn't post videos like I do all the time. So credit to him.
There you go. There you go. It's Mike Pantile strongest, Will Nolan second strongest, Anthony Campbell third strongest. There you go. The official
That's a
rankings.
dream team right there, man. Let's
There you
go.
go. There you go. We need an interfaith weightlifting meet where it's all different Christian denominations for who can lift the most weight. That would be funny.
Oh, that would be epic. I think, yeah, man, the Protestants might have us locked down on that one. But we'll have to train up this next generation of Catholics so we can beat them. We can beat them on everything else. It's just, yeah, it's okay. They can have that.
we just have it hard because
Yeah, Phil, you're absolutely right, dude. I did that on purpose. Sorry, can we just highlight this comment because I think it's hilarious.
which one?
The more you can repeat your initials on your wall, the more you can deadlift. This is my secret. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. Phil knows the secret. See, that's why I can't deadlift anything because I only have my icons on the wall.
It should have
But
the opposite effect, in fact.
yeah, there you go. Um, yeah, unfortunately for the interfaith weightlifting competition, Catholics tend to be from short countries. So the Protestants
That's an
get
advantage. If you look at
I guess
powerlifting,
deadlifting
all the
it
good
is, huh?
powerlifters are
Powerlifting.
sub 5'10".
Yeah, that actually I guess is well I guess from what I've seen, the mechanics you kind of get 2 out of the 3, don't you? Like, you usually get, like, a really good bench and a good squat, or a really good deadlift and a good bench, or a really good, because the issue is that the ratios for each of the 3 big 3 are just slightly too different for you to actually have a perfect physique for all 3, right? Because having, like, the freakishly long deadlift arms actually doesn't help you on the bench if I'm correct. Right? Or am I
Yeah,
wrong?
no, they don't. I got to give a shout out to two more guys that just came to mind that are actually competitive powerlifters. I know one is still active. His name is Sean Noriega. Hamstring Poppy on Instagram. He's got a big following. I've followed him for a long time. Didn't realize he was Catholic, but he's really solid dude. Strong as dude. I don't want to swear, but super strong. And then Johnny Candido, who's another guy too. He's a recent convert, I believe. So, any of you guys want to have some, positive, strong male role models in the faith too? They're physically badasses as well. Sean Noriega and Johnny Candido. Shout out to those guys.
There you go. All right. Well, I think that's all I have. Unless you want to add anything else, I can let you get to your family. I know you've got some more stuff planned for the rest of your day. I'm sure you're busy. Do you have anything else you wanna leave the audience with?
Man, just we've got a third child on the way. Please pray for us. We're going to look over the ultrasound results today at the midwives. Everything looks good, but more prayer can't hurt. And that was it, man. I think we touched on this great topic. I really appreciate you highlighting that specific tweet. I'm glad it had an impact on you, and it was a pleasure to be on, man. Let's definitely do it again. If there's one thing I want guys to take away from this is, dude, start lifting. And if you need help, reach out to a guy like Anthony. Reach out to me. I do this for a living. Just start doing it. All of Christendom needs you to do it. The men next to you need you to do it. So become not just spiritually strong, but physically strong.